My name is Amelia, and for most of my life, I was invisible in my own family. I was the middle child, the one who never shined too bright, never caused too much trouble, the one who was easy to forget. My older brother, Daniel, was the golden child. He carried himself like he was the second coming of our father, loud, confident, arrogant. And my younger sister, Lily, was the spoiled one, the baby of the family. She could bat her eyes and get away with anything. Me? I was the quiet one, the one who stayed in the background, who made sure dad took his medicine on time, who cooked when mom was too tired, who stayed up late helping with paperwork when Daniel and Lily were too busy chasing their own lives. Our father, Richard Bennett, was a self-made man. He built his business from nothing, working day and night until we had a home big enough to make the neighbors jealous. He wasn't perfect, far from it, but he valued loyalty. He used to tell me, "Amelia, at the end of the day, all you really own in this world is your word." I clung to those words, even when the rest of the family brushed them aside. When he passed away suddenly from a heart attack, I thought my heart had been ripped from my chest. The house felt colder without him. The air seemed heavier. Losing him was the kind of pain that settles deep inside your bones. But still, even through the grief, I thought one thing. At least we'd come together as a family. At least Daniel, Lily, and I could lean on each other. After all, blood is supposed to mean something, right? I remember standing at his funeral, staring at the polished wood of his coffin, thinking that was the hardest day of my life. I thought nothing could ever hurt me more than saying goodbye to him. I was wrong. Because, as it turned out, burying my father wasn't the hardest part. The real battle, the one that would tear everything apart, was only just beginning. A week after Dad's funeral, we gathered at the lawyer's office. The room smelled faintly of leather and old paper, and the tension was thick enough to choke on. Daniel paced back and forth like a caged lion, while Lily sat on the edge of her chair, tapping her manicured nails against the wooden table. I felt small, invisible, the quiet middle child, the one everyone expected to get nothing. I had braced myself for a trinket, a meaningless token from Dad. Maybe his watch or a photo album. Anything, really, so I could leave quietly and let my siblings fight over the real inheritance. The lawyer, a tall man named Harrison, cleared his throat. He looked at each of us in turn, adjusting his glasses. "I have here the last will and testament of Richard Bennett." Daniel's shoulders straightened. Lily's eyes gleamed with anticipation. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to keep my expectations low. "And now," Mr. Harrison said, unfolding the document, "I will read the primary bequests." I held my breath. "To my daughter, Amelia Bennett, I leave my family home, all its contents, and a majority share of my business holdings." The words hung in the air, echoing like a shot fired in a silent room. I blinked, thinking I must have misheard. "Excuse me?" I whispered. Daniel froze mid-step, his jaw tightening. Lily's mouth opened, then closed, as if she were trying to swallow something too large. "To my son, Daniel Bennett, and my daughter, Lily Bennett, I leave smaller portions, which include personal items and minor investments. All remaining assets are to be liquidated and divided accordingly." I felt a shiver run down my spine. I was the primary heir, the one Dad trusted most. After all these years of being overlooked, of watching my siblings get everything they wanted, it was mine. The room erupted. Daniel slammed his hand on the table, his face red with fury. "This isn't real. He couldn't. You can't do this to me." Lily's voice trembled, but it wasn't fear. It was indignation. "Amelia, this This isn't fair." I stayed silent, gripping the edge of my chair. Inside, my heart was racing. Shock, relief, and, strangely, a tiny flicker of triumph. But I didn't have time to celebrate. The look on Daniel's face told me one thing. He wasn't going to let me keep it. And deep down, I knew Lily wouldn't either. Something in me tightened, a cold, sharp certainty. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. At first, they tried to act normal. Daniel and Lily plastered fake smiles on their faces, pretending they were happy for me. "Congratulations, Amelia," Lily said, her voice too sweet, like honey laced with poison. Daniel gave a stiff nod, his eyes cold, calculating. I wanted to believe them, to hold on to the last shreds of trust, but something about the way Daniel's jaw tightened when he thought I wasn't looking, it made my skin crawl. A few days later, I discovered the truth. I didn't mean to overhear it. I was just passing the kitchen when I heard them whispering in hushed, urgent tones. "We can't let her keep the house," Daniel hissed. "She doesn't deserve it," Lily said, her tone sharp. "We have to find a way to challenge the will." "Exactly," Daniel replied. "We'll make it a legal nightmare. She won't know what hit her." I froze in the doorway, every word like a punch to the gut. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. They weren't just disappointed or upset. They were plotting against me, my own siblings, my own blood. I thought back to every dinner, every holiday, every time I had quietly helped my father without asking for anything in return. And now this, after everything I'd done, they wanted to take it all away. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. I felt like a target. The next week, subtle cracks began to show. Daniel started making thinly veiled remarks during family dinners. "I guess Amelia's finally showing her true colors," he said one night, swirling his wine. Lily would nod along, her smile sharp. Yes, it must be exhausting being the favorite. I kept my calm, but inside, a storm was building. I realized then that blood didn't make them family anymore. Greed had. And the worst part, I had no idea just how far they were willing to go. Because that day in the kitchen wasn't just the first betrayal. It was the beginning of a war I hadn't even signed up for. I thought the whispers and stares at home were bad. I wasn't prepared for what came next. Daniel and Lily didn't just want the inheritance, they wanted to destroy me. Slowly, quietly, they began their campaign. It was subtle at first. Daniel would make a joke in front of mutual friends. "Amelia, she's always been Daddy's little pet. I don't know how she got the house." Lily would add, "Yeah, it's like she's been manipulating him for years." I felt it in the way neighbors suddenly avoided me, how friends hesitated before returning my calls. Even people I trusted started giving me sideways looks. I tried to confront them once. "Why are you doing this?" I asked Lily, my voice trembling. "We're family. We should mourn Dad, not fight over him." She laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of joy. It was sharp, cruel. "Mourn? Oh, Amelia, don't act like you're the victim. You got what you wanted. Don't think for a second we'll just sit here and clap for you." Daniel didn't even look at me. "Enjoy it while it lasts," he muttered under his breath. I retreated to my father's old study that night, trying to make sense of it. How could they be so cruel? How could siblings, people who shared the same blood and memories, turn into enemies overnight? And then I noticed something that made my stomach twist. A pile of papers Dad had left on his desk, sealed with his initials. I didn't touch them yet. I just stared at them, a sense of both dread and hope crawling up my spine. Because I had a feeling whatever was in those papers could change everything. But I didn't open them. Not yet. Not until I was ready to face the storm that Daniel and Lily were about to unleash. and I had a sinking feeling that the storm had only just begun. A few nights later, I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet, too empty, and my thoughts kept going back to Dad's capers. Finally, I couldn't resist. I went to his study, my fingers trembling as I lifted the stack. At the very bottom, tucked under a ledger, was a small sealed envelope with his handwriting. For Amelia, only to be opened if the time comes. My heart raced. I hesitated, thinking maybe I should wait. Maybe I wasn't ready for whatever truth he left me. But something deep inside told me this was the moment I needed. I broke the seal. Inside was a letter, written in my father's firm, familiar hand. Amelia, it began. If you are reading this, then you have inherited more than just a home. You have inherited responsibility, honesty, and the trust I placed in you over everyone else. I know Daniel and Lily will not take this well. They will lie, they will manipulate, and they may even try to turn the world against you. I swallowed hard. I left most of my estate to you because I knew you were the only one who ever truly cared for me without asking for anything in return. Daniel wasted money on ventures he couldn't handle, and Lily has always been easily swayed by what she wants. You were always quiet, always loyal, always dependable. That is why I chose you. The last part made my chest tighten. They will try to take this from you. Don't let them. And remember, Amelia, you are stronger than you know. I sat there, the envelope shaking in my hands, tears blurring my vision. Dad had seen what I hadn't, how deep their greed ran, how dangerous it could be. And somehow he had trusted me to fight it. A fire lit inside me then, fierce and unstoppable. I wasn't going to be the helpless middle child anymore. I wasn't going to watch Daniel and Lily destroy what Dad built, what he trusted me to protect. I folded the letter carefully, tucking it into my pocket. I was ready to stand up. I was ready for the fight. But I had no idea how much it would cost me, or how ruthless my siblings could really be. Because the first move I made would just be the beginning of a war I never asked for. From that night on, everything changed. I wasn't just Amelia, the quiet middle child. I was Amelia, the one Dad trusted, the one who would protect his legacy. And if Daniel and Lily wanted a war, I was ready. I started small. I documented everything, the snide remarks, the threats, the rumors they spread about me, every message, every overheard conversation, every manipulated friend. I wrote it down. My father's letter was tucked safely in my desk, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. I also hired a lawyer, quietly, carefully, someone who could navigate the storm without alerting my siblings. I couldn't let them know I was preparing for battle. They had underestimated me for years. That had to end. At family dinners, I smiled, I nodded, and even joked when Daniel tried to belittle me in front of friends. But behind that smile, I was calculating, observing, learning. Every move they made, every word they said, I stored in my mind like ammunition. And then one evening, Lily showed up at my door. She was crying, her mascara running down her cheeks. "Amelia, I don't want this to get worse," she said, her voice trembling. "Can't we just talk?" I froze. My instincts screamed that this was a trap. But a small part of me, a part that still remembered our childhood, wanted to believe her. I don't know, Lily," I said slowly. "What do you want?" I just want peace," she whispered. "I know Daniel's gone too far. I don't want to fight anymore." For a moment, I almost let my guard down. Almost. That night, I stayed up, thinking. Her tears were real, but her timing was too convenient. Something didn't add up. And then just as I was about to go to bed, I heard a soft creak from the study. I grabbed a flashlight and went to investigate. There, in the moonlight, was Lily, rifling through my father's desk, her hands shaking as she lifted papers and documents. I caught her. And in that moment, I knew her tears weren't real. They were just a mask, a distraction. Lily wasn't asking for peace. She was looking for weapons against me. And I realized then that fighting back wouldn't just be about protecting what was mine. It would be about outsmarting them completely. Because they started this war, and I had no intention of losing. In that moment, the truth hit me like a freight train. Lily's tears, her confessions, even her pleading, they were just another layer of her manipulation. She wanted to trick me, make me let my guard down so they could strike harder. It was a bitter pill to swallow. My little sister, the one I had once defended, the one I had trusted, was part of the enemy camp. And I realized something chilling. The deeper I dug, the more I would discover just how far they were willing to go. Because the war wasn't just between me and Daniel anymore. Lily was in it too, and she was cunning, maybe even more dangerous than him. But I wasn't going to let them win. Not now, not ever. Daniel's fury didn't simmer. It exploded. Within a few weeks, he filed a lawsuit against me, claiming I had manipulated Dad in his final days to gain control of the estate. The accusation was absurd, but Daniel didn't care about the truth. He only cared about making my life miserable. The court dates were grueling. Sitting across from him in that sterile courtroom, I could see the desperation in his eyes. He was unraveling. Every argument he made seemed more reckless than the last. He snapped at witnesses, contradicted himself, even accused friends of lying on my behalf. "You think this is a game?" he growled during one session. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." I kept my calm, even when his lawyer tried to intimidate me with legal jargon and insinuations. I had something Daniel didn't: proof of honesty, loyalty, and my father's letter. I had kept meticulous records of everything: his threats, Lily's scheming, the whispers, the lies. And every time Daniel tried to corner me, I reminded myself of one thing. I wasn't just defending an inheritance. I was protecting my father's legacy, and nothing, no tantrum, no smear campaign, could shake me. Then came the day Daniel crossed a line. He showed up at my home, unannounced, his face twisted with anger. "You think you've won, don't you? But this isn't over, Amelia. I'll ruin you, and you'll see. Everyone will know the truth about you." I looked him in the eye, unflinching. "Go ahead," I said softly. "Do your worst. But you should know, I'm ready for you." What Daniel didn't know, and what he would never see coming, was that I had discovered the one thing that could destroy him completely. A secret so big, so damning, that it would turn the tables entirely. And the moment I found it, I knew this war was about to end on my terms. I never expected it to be this easy to find. Daniel had made a critical mistake, one that would unravel everything he thought he could get away with. While going through some old company files Dad had left in the safe, I stumbled upon documents showing Daniel had been siphoning money from the business for years. Loans that never existed, falsified invoices, transfers to accounts under fake names. He had been stealing from Dad while pretending to be the responsible heir. The discovery made my blood run cold at first. Fear, excitement, disbelief all rolled into one. Could I actually use this? Should I? I sat down in the study, the papers spread across the desk, and read through each transaction carefully. Every deception, every lie, every betrayal he had hidden behind his confident facade was laid bare in black and white. It was tempting to confront him immediately, to throw the files in his face and watch him crumble. But I knew better. This wasn't about revenge for the sake of anger. This was about winning, about protecting everything Dad had built, and about ensuring that neither Daniel nor Lily would ever harm me again. I thought about Lily too. She was desperate, but her greed and fear made her predictable. Daniel's recklessness was his own undoing. With this information, I could finally level the playing field. That night, I made a decision. I would use the evidence in court. I would let the law expose the truth, and when it did, Daniel would have no choice but to face the consequences of his actions. But even as I prepared my strategy, a small voice in my head whispered, "Revenge feels good, but at what cost?"
Before I could answer, I realized one undeniable fact. Daniel had underestimated me from the beginning, and by the time this was over, he wouldn't even recognize the person I had become. Because this war wasn't just about inheritance anymore. It was about proving that I was stronger, smarter, and more ruthless than either of them ever imagined. The day of the court hearing arrived, and I felt a strange mix of nerves and calm. I had spent weeks preparing, gathering evidence, and lining up witnesses. Every lie Daniel and Lily had told, every secret they thought I didn't know, it all came down to this moment. The courtroom was packed. Daniel's face was red with anger, his eyes flicking nervously between the judge and me. Lily sat beside him, biting her nails, trying to maintain her innocent facade. When my lawyer stood to present the evidence, I felt my heart hammering in my chest. One by one, he laid out Daniel's embezzlement, the falsified invoices, the hidden accounts. Every claim, every threat, every smear campaign was documented and undeniable. I watched as Daniel's face went pale. He tried to argue, to dismiss the proof, but the documents were airtight. Even Lily couldn't deny the truth, and the judge's stern gaze made it clear she would not tolerate deceit. And then the final blow. My lawyer presented my father's letter detailing why he chose me as the primary heir. He spoke of loyalty, honesty, and trust, highlighting how Daniel and Lily had failed to live up to those values. Daniel tried to interrupt, shouting and waving his hands, but it was too late. The judge banged the gavel, and the room fell silent. The ruling was unanimous. The will was valid. I kept the house, the majority of the estate, and full control over the family business. Daniel and Lily were left with their smaller portions and a public record of their deception. Their reputation was ruined, their lies exposed, and their power over me gone. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Victory was sweet, but the cost was high. I had won, but the family I had once known was fractured beyond repair. As I walked out of the courtroom, the weight of the battle lifted slightly, but I knew the scars would remain. I had fought for my father, for his trust, and for myself, and in that moment, I realized something. Winning didn't just mean keeping what was mine. It meant finally standing up, finally being seen, finally being respected. But as I glanced back at Daniel and Lily, defeated and furious, I knew this wasn't just the end of the fight. It was the end of the family I once believed in. The dust finally settled, and the house felt different, quieter, emptier, but also mine. Dad's legacy was safe, the business intact, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of control over my own life. I walked through the rooms, touching the furniture, the walls, everything Dad had built with his hands. I could almost hear his voice, whispering encouragement, telling me I had done the right thing. I had honored him, even when the people closest to me tried to tear everything apart. But the victory was bittersweet. Daniel and Lily were gone from my life, not physically, but emotionally and socially. The siblings I had grown up with, the people who should have been my allies, were now strangers. I missed the possibility of a family, the comfort of shared history, even the flawed love we had once had. Still, I refused to regret standing up for myself. I had inherited more than property or money. I had inherited strength. I had inherited the courage to protect what mattered most, to face betrayal without crumbling, and to trust my instincts when others tried to manipulate me. Sometimes, late at night, I sit in the living room, staring at the fireplace, and think about what could have been. But I also think about what I've learned. Loyalty and honesty are rare, and sometimes love isn't enough to protect you from those you call family. In the end, I didn't just inherit my father's estate. I inherited his wisdom, his strength, and the knowledge that I could survive anything. I had fought the battle, faced the betrayal, and emerged standing. And even though the siblings I once loved are lost to me, I am free, free to live my life on my own terms, strong, capable, and unafraid. Because sometimes victory isn't just about winning. It's about finding yourself in the ruins of what you once thought you had. And as I close my eyes at night, I finally feel a sense of peace, knowing that I am exactly who Dad knew I could be.